Hi, I'm LInsay Bebb. This afternoon I'm going to show you how to go about making disers for stones. Now there's quite a bit on the internet, YouTube and so forth, to show you how to go about making disers for stones that have a cut base or a dead flat base. So we won't be talking about that one today because that's fairly straightforward and you can find that anywhere. What we'll be talking about is how to go about making a diser for a stone that doesn't have a flat base. So something like this, for example. This is a local stone from southeast Queensland. Pretty heavy sort of stuff, volcanic type, and it has a base that's reasonably flat, but there's enough undulation there to cause quite a bit of difference in the way that the diser is made, because the stone has to be recessed in quite a bit. And this is the front as you're looking at it, and you can see it's very, very shallow there, but it goes really quite deep around the back and off to one side. So when you come, it's not just a matter of, as in the simple flat base stones, where you can trace around the outline and then work to settle it down, because you can't get the stone sitting flat in the first place. So that's what we're going to talk about today. That's one type. The other type is type of diser that is for a stone that has a really complicated base, like this Gobi Desert stone. And you can see underneath it that's all over the place. And that's even more difficult. So what has been necessary with this one is to create four different recesses into the diser to get that stone sitting the way I wanted it to sit. So that's even more complicated, but I'll explain how to go about that for you as well. Let me set this in. There we go. So let's have a look. This is one of the stones that I'll make a diser for, just a small one to show you how to go about it. This is a local stone, the same as that basalt type with a bit of green colouring in it. And as you see, it's a plateau stone. So when I sit it on the table, it's not too bad. It sits around about right, but not quite right. The front will be around as I'm looking at it now. So the first thing you need to do when you come to work out how to make a diser is to really have a good look at the stone, all of its faces, and sort of visualise how you see it being presented. So we know it's a plateau stone, so it could be placed in a diser or a suey bone really, but we're going to this is all about making disers. So this is the front I'll select, as you see it there. When we look to the side, it's reasonably well balanced. It shapes in sort of a reverse shape on both front and back. And the base is undulating. It's not super complicated, but there's enough variation there that I don't think I'd be able to just sit it on the wood, draw an outline and start to carve from there. I could probably do it. It'd be a complicated process, well, a lengthy process. So what I do in this case, firstly I've decided that it's going to be recessed into a piece of Tasmanian myrtle. Tasmanian myrtle is really a good timber to work with for diser making or stand making. It's got a very, very tight grain. The grain is not necessarily really that obvious. can be fairly subtle, but the tightness of the grain and the density of the wood is just pretty good for this. And to give you a rough idea, this is a little bit harder than American black walnut. So quite a good timber. So I will be recessing it into that. But to be able to get this as accurate as I can, what I do with stones like this is to make a plaster of Paris mould of the base, which I then transfer, get this sitting as I want it to in the plaster of Paris, the right angle and so forth. And then I flatten off the top of the mould so I can get a good clean outline shape of where I want the stone to sit in the bit of wood. And I just transfer this mould pattern to the wood. So I'll show you how to go about that first. Plaster of Paris. Now, what I'm going to do is to sit the stone into this container with plaster of Paris in it. I'll get the angle just right the way I want it with the stone, and then just let it sit until the plaster of Paris sets, and then we'll take it out and we'll show how we go from there. Now, the first thing I like to do with this is to actually put some oil on the base of the stone to act like a release agent, because I don't want this thing sticking in there, and some oil on the base of the plastic container for the same reason, just to make it easier to get the plaster of Paris out once it's set. Okay, so let's have a go. Plaster of Paris and a bit of water. It's a bit of a rainy day here at the moment, so this it's a bit cool, so this might take a little bit longer to set than it normally would, but it shouldn't be too long. And I don't want it too runny. This looks like it might be just about right when I get it all mixed. Teeny bit more. Perfect. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a copy carver or some type of CNC machine, then you'd be able to do all this very, very easily. I mean, with a copy carver, you get a mould the same as this and just reproduce it exactly on the bit of wood. But I'm not that flash. Plus, I like to do the thing by hand anyway, so if you just want to potter around at home and make the odd base for your stand, this is not a bad way to go about it. It might take a little bit of time, but it's okay. All right. Let's see how we go here. It's a little bit firmer than I'd like, but it'll be okay. Should set fairly quickly anyway, if nothing else. I'm just settling this down. Sorry about the noise. Okay, now let's have a go. This is my front. And I just ease that into the plaster of Paris and bed it down a little bit because I want to get a good impression of the recess. Look from the side, make sure I've got the angle all right for that stone, which I have. And let me check the base, doesn't look too bad. Nice and firm, all good. Okay, so we'll just let that sit now and until the plaster of Paris sets. And then I'll gently remove the stone and we'll see how we go from there. I'll just leave that off to the side and let it do its thing. Now the other stone I'd like to show you how to make a dizer for is this guy. This is a piece of hard sandstone from South Australia, desert country. Very sharp thing, this. But I like this stone. I've had it for a while, and I did make a dizer for it once, but I've got another idea. And when I look at this stone, I like the underside of it as much as I do the top side. So what I want to do with this guy is to actually perch it on a dizer. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. But you can see from the style of stone and the complexity of the base here that if I tried to use a plaster of Paris mould from this, it'd just lock itself in. I have to smash and the whole thing's self-defeating. So this is how I go about it. Oh, what I'm going to do is to recess it into this bit of local cedar, red cedar. So the cedars are much softer wood than the myrtle. So although the dizer will be more complicated, the carving process will be a lot quicker because of the softer timber. So what I do to get the impression here is just to use some florist foam and work out how I want the stone to sit. And in this case, it's going to sit. What I'm looking at is this platform level here, and I'd like that to be as horizontal as I can get it. So it means that this side of the stone is going to be recessed further into the wood than, say, here. But I'll need 3 points at least of contact, so we'll recess that back piece in there too. So what I do is just make sure I've got enough room on the foam to get all this down into place. Hold it at the angle I want it to sit. So this side goes in further. I just press this into the foam. Let me just check all this. Yes, platform's okay. Need a bit more impression at the back. So let's just press it a little firmer. That's not too bad. That looks okay. Should be all right. Now, very carefully, straight up, whoops. And there we're left with 1, 2, 3 impressions. This one's pretty light. I might make that a little bit deeper. But now you can see that this is deeper, not so deep, and not so deep again. So that's what I need to transfer across to here to be able to get my 3 pillars. There's another point of contact just there, but I won't retain that. So looking at that as the front, the stone will be perched on these 3 pillars. So I'll recess it in on those 3 points and then carve away everything else except those 3 pillars onto a thinner platform base. And that's how we'll go about it. You have to be pretty careful with this though, because the foam is easily marked. So when I come to trace around this thing to get the outline to transfer onto that bit of wood, I'm going to have to be very careful. Now, just let me refine this a little bit because I'd like to get that a little bit deeper if I can. So just bear with me while I stuff around here and get that exactly where it was. Thank you very much. And just press a little deeper on that back edge. Okay, that's a little deeper, that should be fine. All right, so next step. Clear plastic sheet, thin pointed marking pen, and now we have to, I'm just putting the plastic sheet level with the forward edge of the foam because I pushed that down so I was looking direct at the front with this as the reference point, so I'll need the same thing here. So I just hold that carefully in place and then very carefully draw around the outline created by that impression. One there, this little one at the back, and this slightly deeper one off here. And there we go. We've got the impression from that. So now we transfer it onto the bit of wood. Now I want a hard biro. Now let's see how we go here, centering this. I want to have not too much front, I want that sitting all inside the wood, so that's all okay. Looking down on the top, everything sits just within the outline of that piece of timber, which means that the first impression is going to go somewhere around there, and the second one will be roughly around there. I'm just marking those 2 points so that I can get this where I need it. Good. Good, good. Okay, once again, the forward edge of the plastic is level with the forward edge of the timber, but it's sitting back into the timber because of where I made those reference points there. Put carbon paper, and pick the damn thing up. Yeah. Carbon paper under there, back where it belongs, keep it nice and flat, and then with the biro carefully trace the outline that I've got on this plastic sheet. Now, in the process of getting this outline from the foam block onto this plastic sheet, there could well have been some distortion. So you have to try to be as accurate as you can. And now when I'm doing this process, if I don't follow that line exactly, then there could be even more distortion. So you need to be as accurate as you can to make sure this thing's going to fit properly in the end. And we'll start off by making sure that when I carve this thing, that I leave the biro marks visible when I do the carving, so that I can gradually take them back if I need to as I refine this recessing. But there now, from the front, you see we have the 3 pieces, and this will be recessed in, sitting on those 3 points, and then we'll do more of the carving away. So let's just have a look and see if this has worked. The mould feels like it's pretty much set. Probably got a little bit more to go. But we'll see if we can get this stone out of here. Woohoo! So there we go. That worked. So you can see that there's just a shallow impression there, but it's irregular enough for me to be able to show you how we can go about doing this now anyway. What I have to do now is just let that harden off. It's just still a bit too soft. So if I try to take it out of the mould now, I think it'll break. So I'll leave that sit until it's quite dry. I'll take it out of there. You remember I put oil around in here, so it should come out fairly easily. And then I will just level off the top. Now normally I do that with a sander, belt sander. And I just get that really quite level once it's dry so that I can get the exact impression. Because at the moment there's some undulation there and I want that dead flat for the outline. And once I get it out, I can retest the stone sitting in it and all that sort of thing. So far so good. We just have to leave that dry now. So we'll just, I'll take a break and come back when that's dry. I've taken the mould, plaster of Paris mould out of its container. It's still not quite totally set. It's probably just the temperature today, but it's set enough for me to be able to get that outline. I've levelled it off just with a very sharp long bladed knife. I've just levelled that surface off there. Normally when it was totally dry I would do that with sandpaper, belt sander as I said. So now we take the impression here of that outline, same as we did with the previous one. Fine tip felt marker, holding this quite steady. And just draw carefully around that outline. As I said earlier, if you've got a copy carver, you don't have to worry about all this, but gee, just think of all the fun you're missing out on if you have a machine to do the recessing for you. Okay. I think we're right. So there's the impression there. Now we just transfer that onto our bit of Tasmanian myrtle that's going to become the dizer for this little stone. Now once again, this is the front, so if we make that about there, which means that the forward edge will be around there. Good. Good. Carbon paper underneath. Flatten that out, biro tracing around the outline once again, as accurately as we can get it. And there we go with the outline. So now we have the mould where we can see what shape the base needs to be for this. We've got the outline. Now this is not too complicated, so what I will do is just carve that out by eye. I'll carve that recess out by eye, get it roughly where it needs to be. There's a couple of tricks we can use for checking, I'll show you. And then we'll slowly test to get the refinement done until the stone is recessed. After the stone is recessed, then we'll work out how to shape the outside of the dizer, design of the sides, legs, all that sort of thing. So there was an article I did for BCI magazine quite some years ago. I'll have to try to find out where that is. But anyway, I put perspex over, hard perspex over this, and mark points where the depth, mark depth markers here, and then transfer them via a drill bit into this, so that then you can carve out just to the depth of these drill bits. It's pretty complicated, but I used that for a long time, and it actually got me to the point where it's a lot easier now. So if you want to start out to be pretty accurate, or you've got a large stone to do where the outline of the recessing is pretty complicated, then that depth marker idea works pretty well. It's time consuming, but it works well if you want to get a good dizer recess and you don't have a machine to do it for you. Okay, so now we'll go about the carving process, and I'm just going to use Dremel, and I've got a few bits here that I think I'll need for this particular job. You could use chisels, files will come in handy later on maybe, certainly for the outline and so forth, but for now all I'm going to do is to carve close to that line, not on it, just inside that line all the way around, and no deeper than the finest depth that I've got to go on this mould. And I'll just do it by eye. So, So what I've done here so far is mark another line around the outside of the recess and carved away a bit of the timber. So I'm making a very small rim, raised rim around there, and then I've drawn another line outside that, which is going to be the outer edge of the dizer. So the dizer is going to be the shape of the base of the stone as you see it there. It'd be fairly close around the stone. Now I'll cut that outer edge on the bandsaw just roughly, and then we'll start to shape both the outside, the feet, and that rim all in one go. So here it is, roughly shaped on the bandsaw, and you can see I've pretty much left that line around there. So now what I'll do is get that rim to the depth I want it, and then we'll work out the outside shape and where the feet are going to go on this thing. So as far as the rim is concerned, that'll be pretty straightforward. The feet is another issue. Let's have a look at where we need feet. So I think we're going to need feet on the outer edge of both ends and leave the middle. I think we're going to need feet roughly here, 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 and where's that one going to be? It should be on the out edge. I think we're going to need feet in those 4 positions. I don't need to have any feet visible in the middle of that stone. It would be better to have void. So if we can have a foot up here and a foot behind here, that will need, because that will require stabilising. That's just a bit broad there. It's not so broad here, but I'll do the same thing. I'll put a foot forward there and a foot back there, and we'll leave in the middle void. So the outer edge is going to shape in, like we said. We need to let me just make sure you understand this. We talked earlier, the outer edge is going to shape in to match that outline on both sides of the rock, rather than have a straight side. So that will shape in there, and then we'll have our feet. This will shape this way, and then we'll have our feet. So the feet don't need to be too obvious. We'll have smallish feet, so if I have a void, that's about there. The same in between the feet here and between the feet here. So that will shape in to there. Just bear with me while I stuff around with this. That will shape into there. And then the feet on this end. Yep, that should look all right. And then the feet here can be there, and this one had better come forward a bit. If that's going to shape out there, we'll change the position of that one. So rather than back there, it'll come forward a bit, and it will shape. We'll make a curve, curve, curve. That should work. So now that I've got that basic shape roughly where I want it, I'll now start doing some filing work, and I'll alternate between files and the Dremel stuff and gradually shape this off a little bit before I actually carve in the feet. sanding finished. So that one just has to be stained and then polished now, and it should be okay. So next we'll have a look at the other one. The only difference here is that we have 3 recesses to make, which need to match up with the stone there. So it's a little trickier in that regard, but the process is exactly the same. So I'll just put a carving bit in here and we'll make a start. Yeah, this one is getting fairly close. It's probably at the point where I need to start testing the stone in it. Maybe not recess quite a little bit on this side yet, but we'll see. Oh well. Got a load of that. Gee. So, this looks pretty good. There needs to be a little bit of refinement, which I'll do now, and it's very hard to see in under there. So what I might do is do the pillar carving before I do the fine detail fitting of this thing, because it's a bit hard to see with all the wood in the way. I need a bit better view. But that's not too damn bad, actually. It's incredible, actually. Well done, Bebb. Okay, a little bit here. This chisel work on such fine spaces, the chisel work is pretty important, I think. that's better there. A little bit of work on this side, but like I say, I think I'll carve away the pillars first, and then we'll come back to that. So what I need to do now is just mark the edges of these pillars with the felt tip pen. So I just come a little bit out from where I've carved, and I can fine tune this later. I don't want to make it too fine right now, but we'll get it roughly where we want it and then fine tune it later. So there we go. Too easy. I'll carve away from there. So this is going to be a sort of a lengthy process, even with softwood, because I'm making these pillars a lot higher than normal. But let me just point out that this particular process I'm going through now has a great application if you're trying to make a dizer for a bridge stone or an arch stone, and you want to sit the stone a little bit higher off the base. So you'd make pillars to sit that stone exactly where you want, and they're likely to be like mine, different heights or whatever, or different depths. But that would be the application for this. I'm just taking it a little bit further and making the pillars a bit deeper. But if you were making a bridge stone or an arch stone, this is the sort of process you'd go through for the marking, the carving and so forth. So let me get on and do this, and we'll speed it all up so you don't get bored, and yeah. Now, like I said before, if you were just making a dizer for a bridge stone or, pardon me, an arch stone, that might be as high as you want the pillars to be, depending on the stone and how you want to display it. So you can see that using a tool like this. This is my go-to tool. It's just an Arbortech mini grinder attachment with a samurai blade on it, attached to a regular Bosch grinder. If you wanted to, you could purchase, these are available all over the world, the Arbortech proprietary thing. It all comes fitted like there, and it has an industrial type blade on the end, but this blade is very thin. So where I'm trying to move a lot of wood, I prefer that samurai blade. Gets rid of it quicker. So, but because I'm going a bit deeper on this one, what I'll do now is just turn off the video, and I'll make some cuts on the bandsaw around the where I want the top of the new platform to be, down here somewhere. And I'll make those all the way around, and then I'll take out some of these chunks to speed up the carving process, okay? So I'll just go and do that off camera, and then we'll come back. Hi, back again. Okay, so I've cut all these blocks off here, and you can see this will be the depth of the platform, a little bit, because a bit of sanding, maybe a little bit thinner. But now I'll just carve away all of this stuff and leave the plinths standing. So we'll just speed up this video. You can see that I'm doing it all, but we'll just run through it quickly. I've just been carving up with the Dremel to put some shaping into the sides of those pillars and to create a bit of depth through here. I've got to level all this out now, and I think I'll just put a very small lip, a ridge around the base of this thing, and just so it looks like it's sitting up off the table a bit. But now I'm just going to do some refinement around here. So here's a close-up of where we're at the moment. This is still roughly done. I've got the platform, the top of the platform to sand off yet, but you can get an idea how this is coming up. I'll put the stone on in a minute so you can see. Yeah. So this pylon might be a little large for me at the moment, but I'll have a closer look at that. But that's just a little close up for you on how it's all coming together at the moment. So this is where we're at with the project at the moment. And I've still got some of the sanding and maybe the carving work to finish off. I'm not sure about the size of this pylon. I'll have a closer look at that. But without any further ado, I'll just get on without any more chit-chat and finish this off. And then we'll have a look at how we can go about finishing things off with stain polish and what have you. What I've done so far, you might be able to see there, I've been sanding all this upper surface and with a coarser grit sandpaper. I've got 2 or 3 other grits to do now, but I've just done that one off camera. And I had a nick out of the corner here, so I had to round that off. So I've rounded all the corners off, but that looks fine. Neither here nor there. So what I'm going to do now is to get on with the finer grade of sandpapers and get the platform up. I'm trying to leave some character, some of that grainy character into these pillars. So I'm being a bit careful about how I sand that, but I don't want it to look too rough. So I'll just get on and do this. I've finished sanding this guy, and it can take often longer than the recessing, the sanding. It depends on what timber you've got. And I've wiped this down with methylated spirits just to get all the dust out of the crevices and everything here. So I'm pretty right to go with the oiling now. I'll just show you the front here. I was thinking about putting a rim, a floating rim around there, but when I just tested and put a piece of timber under there to have a look, I thought that took the eye away from the focus, which should be on the stone. So it was just another element I didn't want. And maybe even if it was lower, it would still be a problem. So I've given away that idea, and there'll be no interruption at the ground. We'll just have the thing coming straight up into the stone. So now you can, the staining, you could stain if you want to. This guy I will stain, that goes with this one. I'll stain that, but this one I'll leave the same colour because it'll be closer to the colour of the stone. It'll darken anyway by putting oil on it, but if I make it a dark brown colour, then it's, once again, it's going to be a little too much obvious. So just remember, the focus is the stone, it's not this other stuff. And it's the same as bonsai. We pick a pot for our tree to complement the tree and to show off the tree, not show off the pot. And here, we're not trying to show off this, we're trying to show off this. It's a point to remember. Okay, so there's lots of different oils you can use. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different commercially available oils here, and one I mix myself. And I'm not sure which is the best. I mean, they're all a lot of hard work. Well, some of them are. You put the oil on and then you've got to leave it for a while and then buff it and oil it and buff it and oil it and buff it, and this goes on forever. But I think I will just use a bit of the oil. No, I'll use hard burnishing oil. But whatever oil you use, it really doesn't matter. You just read the instructions on the can and away you go. I should probably have gloves on for this, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to go straight into it. Just using a cotton cloth. Now with this particular oil, and with a lot of them, you put it on a reasonable coat and then you give it 24 hours to soak in, and then you do it again. And then maybe again and again, and buffing in between. It depends on how good a finish that you want to have on this thing. But I think if you're using timbers with really nice grain and beautiful natural colour, then oiling them is it should be a first thought. I mean, it depends. Remember, I've just said we're trying to have this dizer complement the stone, and we don't want the dizer to take away from the stone. We're talking about Japanese suiseki stuff now, not contemporary or whatever. So what was I saying? Yes, so maybe sometimes leaving the natural colour might actually distract. So it really depends on the stone. Now you can see here, because the base is finely sanded, there were 4 grits up to 600 grit of sandpaper here, but not the same degree of sanding here. So the oil is darkening a bit. So these pillars are being a little bit darker than the ground just by virtue of the sanding that's been done. This video should probably come with a kids don't try this at home warning too, and adults use the proper safety equipment and dust masks and gloves and everything else. So please take note of that. If you're going to do this at home, use all the right stuff. And don't take safety guards off your tools. Anybody who carves wood on bonsai, that's the first thing they do. Now a brush would probably help me here, but it's getting there. So just a little bit more and then we'll leave it for 24 hours. I'm not going to show you the whole process of polishing, because this was all about how to recess a stone and how to make a dizer. But you know, you can see. You'll soon work out how. I mean, and the easiest thing you could do with some of this stuff is just put a poly coat on it. Shake a can up, spray it once, twice, thrice, whatever, and give it a nice poly coat. That's the easy way to go. But so there's all sorts of degrees of difficulty you can go to about the finishing. And like I say, this was not about that. I'll just put this on so you get a better idea of the colour that this is going to finish up. It will be a gloss finish, certainly down around the base, because this will be hand buffed and all that sort of thing. And the actual process with this hard burnishing oil could take about a week, I suppose, you know, by waiting for the oil to harden off before you buff it and all, soak in and all that. So that's its first coat. And bit of oil in there. I don't want to really get it on the rock, but we should be okay. So this guy, dies are finished. Lots of work to go on the carving. So as I said in the beginning, this sort of recessing would be very helpful. The process would be helpful if you try and display a bridge stone or a arch stone or whatever. In this case, it's neither. The image that came to me was floating dreamtime. It was like a cloud. And that's why I wanted to perch it up. And as I explained in the beginning, the underside is just as nice as the top. So I wanted to show off as much of the rock as possible. So maybe it works for some people, maybe it doesn't for others, but I'm happy. Thank you. Now, this other one, I said we're going to stain because this is the Tasmanian myrtle. The grain is fairly plain. Not a lot of texture to it, but because of the stone that we've got here, I'm going to darken it. So what we'll use there is, and I haven't got it here, is Japan black, brown. Okay, we'll put the gloves on here because I hate getting black hands after using this stuff. This is just a proprietary product called Japan Brown. You can thin it down to a lighter colour. You can control the degree of colour that's going on to this thing by how long you leave the stain on the wood. So I'll just show you. I might use the brush for this one. So I just coat it all over as quick as I can, getting it even, sort of ish. And you can do this with a rag. I use the brush where I've got a rather complicated dizer. Okay, now, if you don't want a whole lot of colour and you don't want it to be too dark, what you can do is actually rub it off right now. And just take all the excess off. And you can see that the colour is darkened somewhat, but it's not too dark. So we need to let this dry off, and then we can buff it. And then we can give it another coat if we want it a bit darker, or if we're happy with the colour as it is, we can simply go ahead and oil or polish that. So I will probably, let me just have a look. Wrong way, dummy. Okay. I rather think I might just leave it at that. I don't want it too dark. I rather like that subtle colour that's got there now. So I'll leave that one as it is. And this one, as I said, will be continued on. What I'll do is I might satin polycoat that, or I might just have a satiny oil finish to it. Either way would work all right. But this one will be ongoing, quite a bit of polishing and so forth. So there, I hope you have followed, or I've been able to give you some ideas about how to recess a stone, how to make a dizer that might suit the stone, the sorts of things that you need to think about when you're thinking about making a dizer, because there's quite a few. It's very similar to bonsai, of course, as I've said, and drew the analogy with choosing a pot for a tree. So it's very much the same here. So I hope you got something out of it. Thank you very much.